I forgot what my topic is. I'll tell you in a second. I have it right here. Limited context perspective, which sounds very fancy and very, a bit mysterious, but it's a huge, huge deal. I'm just waiting for Norma to come. She said she was going to come, and I believe she will come. So come on, Norma. We need you. We need you, Norma. We need you. While Norma takes her time coming, I'll put it here. I can see the comments. All right. So limited context perspective. It sounds a bit sort of vague and mysterious, and I don't know, but academic maybe, but it's a big, 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 big deal. In other words, well, I'll just read through this and then we'll get into it. Almost always anxiety and worry are applied in a limited context because, of course, the positive usually has just as much chance of being true as the negative. Yet worry and anxiety only focus on the negative. It's a limited context perspective thus. Further, probability is ignored, not even considered. This restriction of context severely concentrates energy and attention, magnifying what's focused on via the immersion. And when that is potentially negative, the result is anxiety and worry. So the big point here obviously is that, hey, don't get caught in a bubble. That's what limited context perspective is. It's a bubble. It's a bubble created by fear, by anxiety, by worry. And anxiety and worry are exactly that. They just fear, right? They fear bubbles, unnecessary fear. We don't always think of anxiety and worry as fear, but isn't that what it is? Yeah. So when you realize this, you're letting fear dominate your perspective. You're seeing things from one way, one perspective only. Yeah. Not ideal. Not ideal. Brilliant. Hello, Janelle. Hello, Janelle. Hello, hello, hello. Brilliant, Norma. You're also here. Wonderful, wonderful. It makes me very happy that you guys are here. Very, very happy. Now, this limited perspective, limited context perspective, this is a big deal. It's a very big deal because it doesn't only apply to anxiety and worry. It applies to everything. Take for instance, just ourselves. Yes, who we are, how we are. If we constantly are thinking of ourselves in the context of, well, I'm flawed, I'm no good, I'm useless, blah, 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 all this stuff, that's a limited context perspective. Is it not? Yeah, totally it is, right? Because you're seeing yourself only in a certain bubble. Of course, there's some things you're useless in. Of course, there's some things you don't know. Well, duh. That doesn't mean you can't learn them. It doesn't mean that you need to learn them either. And just because you don't know some stuff doesn't, so what? You know lots of other stuff, right? So it's fascinating to me. If you look at just any person that you know, right? They can talk. You say, yeah, so what? Well, go talk to the computer guys and robotics guys. Yes, and animal trainers. You say, well, can they talk? No, not really. Yeah. So Coco, the chimpanzee, famous chimpanzee, right? Who can converse through the computer and sign language. I think she has a vocabulary of like 600 words or something like that. And she can communicate very well. And so not everybody doesn't have language, but her language, which is a profound thing, this is a big deal, and she's an exception in all this, right? But any person who has that limited the vocabulary, well, they would, I don't know, that would be extremely limited, right? Very, very few people have such a limited vocabulary. So I'm trying to point out that, things we take for granted, just the fact that we can speak, yes, and understand. You understand what I'm saying? Maybe, maybe here and there, say, well, perspective. What does he mean with perspective? perspective or context, well, you can figure it out. You have enough vocabulary to put it all together. You've got all the tools that you can connect to more. So no matter what you think of yourself, you have more abilities than you realize you have. This is a massive big deal. So this limited context perspective, we are now focusing it in the context of anxiety and worry. Why? Why do it? Why focus only on the negative? This I really want to know. Yeah. So anybody who can answer and tell me a good reason why we insist on focusing only on the negative, only on that bubble? Why? What are you afraid of that's positive? Let me ask that question again. What are you afraid of that's positive? And you say, well, so it's like, why would anybody afraid of positive? It makes no sense. It's like, hello, come on, what are you talking about here? But some people are. They are profoundly afraid of the positive. Why? Because it might put them on the spot. It might force them to sort of show who they are, right? There's no risk in always looking at the negative from a personal point of view, right? But when you're looking at the positive, there's risk, because what's the risk? The risk of failure. And as a result, people who are obsessed with risk of failure, they never really do anything. They don't take any chances. And they get stuck in always being right. Well, when you predict the wrong stuff and it goes wrong, well, let's see, I'm right. And if it doesn't go wrong, well, okay, well, it turned out good. See, it doesn't, you sort of win either way. Get out of this mindset, people. Get out of this mindset. It gets you nowhere. This obsession with winning and this fear of losing, it just limits you, right? Just limits you. Just limits you. Edison said, Thomas Edison now, he said that, what he did was essentially 90% failure. That's how he got to invent stuff. Just doing it wrong all the time. You try it, it doesn't work. You try it, it doesn't work. You try it, it doesn't work. And you keep going until it does work. Dale Carnegie, which you see now sort of, I think, getting to be a little bit more popular again, from Win Friends and Influence People. And by the way, this is a very misunderstood book, unfortunately. Sadly, people see this as sort of a manipulation thing. And it was never meant to be a manipulation thing. The whole point of that book was about being earnest, being sincere, being real, being genuine, and also making an effort. And especially not being hung up with failure. So, Mr. Carnegie started off with nothing, yes? And he became a very wealthy guy. Now, I'm not saying that we need to become wealthy people, so, just be aware of this. This is absolutely not something that is assumed good, yes? I don't think so at all. I think it's just, whatever. And it happens, and that's it. If it is, it is. You don't have to go and do this. All right. So he started off in the depression, and he said, well, I need to make some money, and I need to get a job. I need to do something, and all this, right? The only thing that was available. This is during the depression, remember, right? This is now a real depression, not the nonsense that they talk about today. The recession, and everybody gets all hung up, and it's like they're not even close, right? Where you have soup kitchens and all this stuff, right? In our lifetime, well, since then, we haven't experienced that. So anyway, so he said the only job he could find was to sell insurance. Yes, sell life insurance during the depression. Who the heck wants to now spend money on life insurance, right? All right. But anyway, so I said, look, that's all I can do. We'll give it our best shot, and we'll make it work. So he went and he knocked on the doors, and he did, it's called a negative close or negative opening. And he said to the people, he basically approached it from the opposite logic. He says, you don't want life insurance, do you? Right? He didn't want to waste their time saying, do you want life insurance? He just went right to the heart of the thing. It was very real. And says, you don't want life insurance, do you? Right? Well, and of course, 9 out of 10 people said no. Or agreed, said, no, I don't want life insurance, thank you, bye. Right? No waste of time. He went to the next door. And this was very efficient. And his logic was that it didn't matter. At one point, somebody says, well, actually, you know what? I really do. And there you go. Right. So there's some genius here, because when you say that and somebody says, well, you know, I really do, and then they invite him in, they're now asking for the product. And well, now it's just a matter of how much and all this, you know, you already. Whereas if you said, do you want life insurance? People don't want to be sold, you see. So anyway, so there was some psychology to it. But his main point with that was that you just got to keep doing what you're doing and don't worry about failing. You know, play the numbers game. This is it. You know, a failure wasn't an issue for him. It was just play the numbers. That's it. Just play the numbers. And he said, well, you know, all I had to do was simply make the effort, go from door to door, and this is it. And he made lots of money doing this, right? So you just have to have that patience and the persistence. So my point is, when you operating from like worry and you're avoiding doing things, positive stuff, simply because you are in this mindset of, oh my God, I can't do stuff because what if I fail? You know, how many people actually ask that question? So they're worried about all sorts of stuff that they never really ask. So the question is, and let me ask you, Janelle, and you, Norma. Yeah. So what happens if you fail? I'm asking you. Type it in comments there. Well, I'm assuming, hoping you're still, yeah. I hope. This one I want to know. What happens if you fail? There you go. You learn, says Janelle. That's one thing. All right. What else, Janelle? What else, Norma? What happens when you fail? Failure leads to a conclusion. Fantastic. We look for reasons. Yes. We learn. We look for reasons. There's a conclusion. Now, what you're not saying is that the world ends, right? You're not telling me the world ends and this is a calamity. This is like terrible, and you're going to experience pain and suffering and whatever. No, you don't get thrown into jail for failing. Yeah. I'm saying them, Norma. I see your replies. I'm not typing. I'm just talking. So I'm responding verbally to you. I'm not sure if that's what you meant or not, but I'm assuming so. So this is fantastic. You know, once we understand that, you know, failing is not some calamity, and moving out of the limited context perspective belief that failing is terrible. If we don't just take that one more step and say, well, if I fail, so what? What happens then? The moment we just go one step further, just one, say, well, now that I think about it, you know, I failed lots in my life. You know, when I was a child, how did you learn to walk? By failing, correct? Did you learn to talk? By failing. How did you learn to play any of the games? By failing. Yeah. Whatever game you played, you know, whatever sport. Were you a superstar right from the get-go? No, you weren't, right? You may have been naturally talented, but you weren't a professional athlete right at the get-going. So you were failing right at the start, see? When we look at it in this context, that we're always failing, and throw this stupid word failing out. It's an idiotic word. It's just a social hierarchy paradigm nonsense. It's a way to control and bully and manipulate people. Oh, you failed. Look at you, terrible you, blah, blah. Come on, man. That only works on people who've got egos, right? It's just absolute rubbish. Yeah. So if you don't have an ego, you okay, I say, well, you know, that's your problem. For me, I learned. Fine, you can avoid failing, but you're also going to avoid learning. If you avoid failing, you avoid learning. It's like, wow, that's one hell of a choice. Well, okay, you can avoid failing and just be this ignorant dumbass who said, well, I don't fail, you know, whatever. And, you know, bullshit. Okay, well, it's fine. You can have that. I rather learn. So to me, it's all learning, right? That's it. Always, always, always. Even when I succeed, I may fail. Huh? What are you talking about, so? Again, limited context perspective. Yeah. Okay. So I've been experimenting and playing around with making well, I call them soul jacks now because, well, I wanted to make flapjacks in the beginning. I used to make them when I was a kid. Um, I always cooked for myself pretty much as a kid. Well, anyway, and they really are. It's just a flour thing that you mix up. You make a batter, you put it in a pan, you cook it. All right. So I think the ones that I made as a kid, I made with eggs. I don't have eggs handy, so okay. I've been experimenting with non-eggs variety and just basic recipes: flour, water, or milk, or half and half, or mixed. Some ratio doesn't really matter. It's just liquid. But a salt, but a sugar, and oil was kind of important. And then from there, I started experimenting. Baking powder, because I remember putting baking powder in as a kid, or yeast, which I'm putting in now. But so I made this, and well, you can't really much go wrong with this stuff. Whatever you make is as long as you cook it, it's edible, right? But you can. So my point is, my first experiments, they didn't quite come out to what I was looking for, but they were edible. So I succeeded, but I also failed in making what I wanted to make, right? So, but does it matter? No, because I succeeded, but I also failed. Does it matter? No. Yeah. So either way, when you throw those two words out, success and fail, and you just focus on doing, yeah, life is a lot easier. Think about the stuff that you're worried about. Are you worried about the actual doing of it? I mean, like, as in, this is risky and dangerous and whatever. No, I'm not going and I don't know, climbing on a high something that's, I could fall off or whatever. I'm not doing dangerous stuff. I'm just cooking. Well, okay, cooking can be dangerous if you're an idiot, but if you're not an idiot, it's not dangerous. So where does success and fail come into it? It's just totally irrelevant. To me, those words aren't in my dictionary, right? I do, and I learn. That's it. Even if it doesn't work, I learn. So that's it. My whole life is just learning and doing. How simple is that? I'm not hung up with this success and failure nonsense, which just causes aggravation, sucks energy, gets you nowhere. It's a total bloody waste of time. It's just pointless. Yeah. So if you find yourself, anxious and worrying, ask yourself about what? What's the bubble that I'm in? What exactly am I worried about? And in what context am I worrying? Can I go a little bit more? Is there any chance of this thing getting any kind of positivity coming out of it? Right? Of course, there's always positivity to be gained. Why? Because you can always learn. Right? The worst thing is a good bad example. Anything that doesn't work out the way you intended, well, okay, like my soul jacks, they didn't come the way I wanted. I kept experimenting, kept fiddling. I had to adjust with the temperature on my hot plate over here. It's very fine. It's very fiddly. So, I just kept at it. I just kept at it. Now I'm making all sorts of variations, and it's quite wonderful. And it's really cool. I mean, this is all I've been eating for the last 2 weeks. I'm really enjoying because every time it comes out different. But anyway, I can eat the same thing for a week or two. It's not a problem. But I'm enjoying the hell out of it. Doesn't matter that I'm eating the same thing for a week or two. So it doesn't matter. And I guess when you make stuff yourself, you enjoy them a little bit more, even if they didn't come out quite exactly as you were intending. But that's the magic, right? Illness can produce failure. That's very interesting, Norma. How do you mean? Yeah, lack of intent leads to failure. Yes, yes, yes. And again, it's when you take that word failure out, its lack of intent essentially leads you in nowhere, and you just go in directions that you don't want to do. And so this is just kind of, directionlessness or being lost, we could say. Lack of intent. Yes, clarity of intent and having specifics intent, it's huge. It's huge. It makes all the difference. It's very, very, very powerful. Yeah, 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 exactly. The fastness of your intent. That's a good way of saying it. Yes, no. To have clarity of intent and the fastness of your intent, at least, from Way of Impeccability, we just call that unbending intent, to have unbending intent. But of course, there's no need to hold on to any particular terminology. It's just convenient, and we use that, or at least I do. And this is very powerful. It's very fun. to have a vocabulary that is enhancing, like unbending intent. It's like, man, you hold on to that. You don't let it bend. You don't give up on it, because intent takes time. So I'm gonna shift out a little bit, since you brought intent into this. Yes, Norma, intent is a very, very big deal. And let me back up a little bit before I get into a bit more detail about intent and what it is, and how to use it and things like this. Just to chat a bit more about intent. To say though, let's go back a step and say, what is the intent of anxiety and worry? Yeah, Janelle, Norma, what is the intent of anxiety and worry? And anybody watching this on replay, I've said this many times before, but when you comment, if you're watching the replay, because it's a replay of a live, there's a special feature that happens. When you comment while you're watching, it puts a time next to you there. And when I come along and see your comment, if I click on that time there, it takes me to that part in the video and I see what you're commenting on. It's a very, very cool feature. So please comment, and I always respond. Uh, exactly. There is really no intent to anxiety and worry, right? It's just this mindless activity. Just like, I don't know, you can see it sometimes in certain, like chickens, they'll walk around and they're a bit stressed and worried. They don't know what the hell they're worried about, but they're worried about something, because I don't know, it's just the way they are. I guess they're always on alert because everybody likes eating chicken. I mean, not just humans, but in nature too. So, all right, fair enough, but we don't have that. So you don't need to always go around being anxious and worried. And of course, a lot of that intent is, like we said earlier, it's people are looking to show, look, I care. I'm a caring person because I worry about everything. Well, that's kind of a bullshit way of showing you're caring, but okay. Or look, I'm important in some way. Pay attention to me. I've got something serious and important. Look, you got to worry about this. See, that's attention, seeking attention. Come on, man. Really, you think that you fooling everybody with this nonsense, but of course, everybody sees through it. So this is what really fascinates me when people do things for bullshit reasons. They think nobody sees the bullshit. Everybody sees it, just nobody says anything about it. Let me repeat that. This is a really big point. Everybody sees your bullshit. Just nobody talks about it. And I don't want to say, because, well, it's awkward and uncomfortable. They want to get in a whole big long drama argument with you because, well, you're already a bullshitter. Now I've got to spend another couple of hours listening to your bullshit, defending your bullshit. No, please, sorry. I can do without that, right? So nobody tells you this. Exactly. Worry is negative. There's no point to it. I mean, being cautious and being concerned, being careful, and, well, that's a different thing. If you have a legitimate caution and a concern, well, then act on it. Take preventative measures, prepare yourself, change your circumstance, your situation, do whatever you can. If you've done everything you can and it's still something that might happen, well, then it is what it is, and there's nothing you can do about it. Well, too bad, right? So it's like, okay, you're worried about a meteor falling on your head. All right. Well, now, not a lot of people worry about meteors falling on their head, but there are people who do worry about this. Okay. So, they stay indoors. Maybe when they go outdoors, they wear a motorcycle helmet or something. All right. I don't know, whatever stupid things you can do. But, well, I got news for you. Even inside a house, if a meteor big enough, it's just going to go right through your roof and it's still going to hit you. You're still going to be dead. That's it. End of story. So nothing you can do about it. What's your worry going to make a difference? It's just going to make your life miserable. If the meteor is destined to hit you on the head and kill you, well, so be it. At least have fun enjoying your life until that happens, right? There's no point to worry. Exactly. It just makes no sense. Makes no sense whatsoever. And if you do find yourself worrying, say, am I substituting my worry? Here is how it makes sense, Norma and Janelle, right? Am I die crossing the road? Exactly. Most motor vehicle accidents happen within sight of the home, right? Very close to home. So, right, people don't necessarily get killed in those, but they can sometimes. right? So yeah, simple things can get you killed. So my point is, with anxiety and worry, there is sometimes a logic to it, but not the logic that you think. If you find yourself worrying or being anxious, this is a part of you telling you that, hey, you need to do. You can't substitute anxiety and worry for doing. That's like it's not going to solve the problem. It's a flawed belief that this is how you solve a potential problem, by being anxious and worrying about. No, it doesn't solve it, right? So you've got to do. If you're anxious and worried about failing your exam, well, study harder. And if you've studied your hardest and you fail the exam, well, it's not meant to be. So be it. Take it again, try again, or whatever. Move on to something else, right? So the key is, if we're looking at limited context again, see, if you think your anxiety and worry is a way to kind of get out of doing things, it's a replacement for doing. Well, no, that's just complete bullshit. You're just lying to yourself, right? It's not. So if you do find yourself anxious and worrying, and you're not a bullshitter, you're not a silly person, say, why am I worrying about this? What am I not doing? And then look for what you can do it. Once you've done it, say, well, is there anything else I can do? Is my conscience at ease? Have I done everything I can do? Yes, it is. Okay, so nothing more I can do. And I can go on my way free and clear and at peace and say, I've done everything I can do, and I can be at peace, right? This is what impeccability is all about, right? Impeccability is huge. When you're impeccable, there's nothing to worry about. You've been impeccable. You can trust after that, because you've done everything you can do. You've been thorough. You've been diligent. You've been scrupulous. You've been conscientious. Conscientious means your conscience is clear. You've done everything you can do. That's it. Now, doing everything you can do doesn't mean you've done everything that can be done. Sometimes we do everything that we know to do, or that we've researched to do, and it's still not enough. Well, so be it, But typically, if you've been impeccable, at least in my experience, I've never not seen this happen. If you've been impeccable and things don't work out, they work out in a really way that it basically takes you off the track you're on and puts you on another track, right? And it's like, wow, if that hadn't happened, well, like for instance, somebody they got a big project at work, and they do the project, and they're very diligent, and they're very thorough, and they do all their research, and they really like put everything into this, right? And they do a good job, and it still doesn't work, and they lose their job, right? This happens, right? Because some people are so stupid, they don't understand effort is the issue, not success, you see. So okay, so all right, they lose their job. I've seen this many, many, many times, where people get fired for stupid nonsense reasons or whatever, and they were really good at what they did, right? And they were conscious and thorough and diligent. But a little while afterwards, or sometimes takes a couple of years or however long, and then they realize, wow, you know what? If that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have moved into this. I wouldn't have gone into this thing. I wouldn't have met my husband or whatever. There's almost always some magic that happens as a result of those supposed failures or mess ups or whatever. It's too incredible. It's absolutely too incredible. Yes. So this is a very profound thing. Doing is a big issue, and if you do impeccably, you have nothing to worry about. That's it. You have nothing to worry about. You just do impeccably. You do whatever you can, and you learn. Yes. Well, you know what? I didn't know enough. I was ignorant. Okay, now I know better, and then you upgrade. So you always get that benefit of learning, no matter what. No matter what. So when it comes to intent, right? I was on that point of unbending intent. So now we say, wow, you know what? I'm going to set my intent to whatever it is that I want to do, right? Which is to be positive, for instance, or to not worry, to have joy, to have fun. That's it. To trust and to learn and grow, whatever you set your intent for. Doesn't matter. Intent to get a job. Doesn't matter. Whatever you want to do. You set your intent. Why do you need to have unbending intent? Right? First of all, an intent is something that I'm not setting intention. There's a big difference with intention. Intention is like a wish and a hope, and well, okay, they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Why does that statement make sense? Because it's an intention, not an intent. An intention is something that's not really acted on, right? There's no doing involved. So it means nothing. I can have all the good intentions in the world. It's like saying, well, I wish I wish I had a good job, but I don't do anything to get the good job, right? No, what does it matter? Nothing. It's meaningless. An intent, however, an intent is a commitment to do. If you intend doing something, by implication, you are going to do it. You are doing it. You are doing something about it, right? The intent itself is a doing. Yeah. So an intent is saying out there to the universe, whatever, hey, I'm really serious about this. Look, I'm doing something about it, right? I don't know exactly what all to do, but I'm doing whatever I can do, right? So, so now things start happening in the world around you. You're putting your intent out, but it takes time. So, from that mechanism, if you don't maintain it, it's like when you push a car. I don't know how many people have in today's world, maybe, with AAA and all this, people don't push their cars anymore. When I was a kid, it was all manual drive, and you very often you push your car to get it started. But anyway, if anybody who's pushed a car, especially on your own, it takes a lot of effort to get that car moving. Yes. But once it's moving, even though it's maybe moving slowly, it doesn't take nearly as much energy to keep it going. But you need to keep that pressure on the car to keep it moving. The moment you kind of let up, the car stops again, and then you got to make all that effort to get rolling again, right? This is exactly how intent is. Why does this work that way? Because intent is looking to leverage what you want. You're looking to get outside assistance. But how do you know somebody's really serious about their intent? They may think they want things, right? Which is what intentions really are. A lot of people think they want stuff, but when it comes down to do they really want it, they don't want to make an effort to get it. So, well, then of course they don't really want it, right? But all right, so now you've indicated that you really want it. But if you give up after a little while, well, I guess they didn't really want it. So you got to stick with this. You got to stick with your intent. You got to have unbending intent. You can't let up, because then that car stalls. All right, I guess if you accidentally, whatever, then you have to make that effort to get it going again. But this is why it's important. It's about energy management, right? It's a very big deal. So intent is a huge, 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 powerful thing, and especially to develop the ability to have unbending intent. And now, it makes sense why I keep saying patience is a superpower. Because when you're doing that, you need to have patience. I mean, if you want to, all right, just try it. Maybe, push your car like 100 meters, 100 yards on a flat street. That's it, just 100 yards, right? Just you and you alone, right? And see what it takes. It's slow. It takes patience. Even just 100 yards, right? You just, or maybe even more, just like the length of your block, depending on how long your block is. But you'll see that you can do this, but it's a slow process, and it takes patience, right? Because that car is moving very slowly. You can't get up much speed. It takes too much energy to get up much speed. You'll wear yourself out, and then you're like, and then the car stops, and you have to start all over again. So you have to have that measured approach, constantly at it. Not too much energy, but you can't go too little, because then it will stop, and then you got to start all over again. So this is a very, very powerful exercise to understand the relationship between patience and intent, right? That constant pressure of just doing, and never letting up. It's an incredible thing. And you get there in the end, right? I mean, you've actually moved your car, which is a big, everything, you've done it, right? It's a very cool thing to do, actually. If you've never done it, it's a really cool exercise that I really recommend that you do. Because when you realize that I can do something like this, it gives us that inner confidence. It's one thing to know you can do something, and it's quite another thing to believe you can do something. So it's really, really, really powerful to do this, really valuable. This is massively, massively, massively important to understand intent and understand sustained effort, which is, unbending intent. That's what it is, sustained effort. And it requires patience to have sustained effort, as any parent will know, right, Norma? Right, Janelle? When you have children, as a mother, this is your superpower to have. Well, I guess as a father too. I shouldn't be sexist here, but I mean, in the world that I grew up, mostly mothers were doing the work with the kids, which is a great loss for the fathers. They didn't get that benefit of dealing with the kids. So it's kind of foolish. But in today's world, I am pleased to see that there's a greater equivalence, or a larger percentage of families where these duties are split. The income duties, the housekeeping duties, the parenting duties, both are doing it, or more. Sometimes it's they bring in other family members or even outside members. It's a community involved, so very cool. But anyway, you need tons of patience. Exactly. Yes, exclamation. Right. What if we worry about others? Well, this may be Norma. When you're worried about others, have you thought about how others feel about you worrying about them? May not be particularly complimentary. If I'm worrying about you, am I not saying you're not capable of taking care of yourself? So that's not a very positive thing about you, is it, Norma? See what I mean? Yes, I understand. I'm kind of pressing a button a little bit here, right? To make this, to say, it's not up to you what others do. It's up to others what others do. Now, you care for somebody and you love them and you want the best for them. Why worry? Why focus on the negative? Why not set an intent to say, I want the best for you, whatever that best is. I'm not going to decide what the best is. I just want the best for you. That's it. Whatever you think is the best for you, whatever is the best for you, whether you think it or not, right? That's much better. So instead of worrying about them, why not do the opposite of worrying? What would be the opposite of worrying? Because worrying is you focus on the possibility of a negative energy or something negative happening. You might be causing that thing through your attention. That's, to me, that's really like, wow, 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 wow. I don't want to be adding to your problems. Hell no. Right. So this is a very, very, very important issue. Very, very, very important. Right. So that we want to say, no, instead of me worrying about those that I love, I want to be doing positive things. So what is the opposite of worry? Yeah. So now, what do you think the opposite of worry is? Norma? Hmm. Trusting? Yes. 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 What else? What else could it be? I mean, I don't think there's just one thing that's opposite of worry. Come on, Norma. What's your favorite word? And trust without trusting. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Come on, Norma. What's your favorite word? The opposite of worry is Norma's favorite word. Leave it with the universe. Exactly. Exactly. Love, Norma. Love. Isn't trust also love? I mean, if I have capital T trust, am I not loving the universe? Which love is, I'm insisting on the best. I'm assuming the best. If I love somebody, I assume that they are sensible. I assume they are good. I assume that they are going to do the best. They're going to make effort, right? So yeah, exactly, Norma. Love. Exactly, exactly, exactly. There is a delay. There is a delay. So that's why I kind of wait and pause like that, right? So when we think of this, why instead of worrying about somebody I love, why don't I just love somebody I love? Right, there you go. And in my love, is that love not going to be sending them positive energy and moreness? Yeah, it is. It is. It's a very profound thing. So why worry? Why worry? Why add stuff that maybe might happen? You know, why give energy to potential negativity? Right now, it doesn't mean that I can't be cautious and careful and look at stuff in that way. Of course I can, right? But that's not worrying, because worrying is no action. If I'm concerned and cautious, this is connected to action, at least hopefully, right? At least we would want to assume so. Because if you're concerned and cautious without action, then it's just worry again, right? So that's the difference to me. Yeah. Then I'm taking into cognizance what I can do and what is appropriate to do and what's possible to do. And I do it. And if there's nothing I can do, well, there is something that I can do, which is, as you guys have said, which is trust. And the other thing I can do is to love, which is to send positive energy. Whereas to worry is just to send negative energy. It's like, come on, man, I don't want to be sending loved ones negative energy, right? So there's just no logic to anxiety and worry. It's just something that people have taught us to do because they want to justify their own silliness. And this is terrible. This is absolutely terrible, right? And they worry and are anxious for all sorts of feeble reasons, which is, ego, attention, all of the stuff, avoidance of action, avoidance of effort, and all this. And really, when you actually think about it, this is the key point with anxiety and worry. It's all very, very obvious once we just think about it a little bit, right? Obvious that anxiety and worry is this massive, great, big foolishness, silliness. It's a square circle thing. It doesn't make much sense whatsoever. Right? So when we do this and we realize this, it really changes things in a massive, profound way. And all we need to do is say, it's a limited context perspective. It's a bubble. That's what limited context perspective is. It's a bubble, right? And when we understand this, to the moment you realize and you start paying attention to it's a bubble, that's when the bubble pops, right? So to pop a bubble, literally an actual literal bubble, yes, it takes the least amount of pressure and energy. I mean, like a pinprick, right? That's the tiniest amount of little bitty that you need. I mean, it's the smallest amount of pressure that you could possibly apply is a pinprick. Well, there you go, pops the bubble. So it takes very, very little to pop a bubble. They're very, very fragile, right? So when we realize this, a bit of awareness, in other words, it will pop the bubble right away. It doesn't take much. But now we mustn't be put off by saying, wow, now that I look at it from the pop bubble, it's like, man, it's so obvious. And well, this can't mean much. It's like too duh, right? No, realize that, when you do see things and you do pop that bubble, they are a complete duh. And that it's like, I can't believe that I was doing this. It's so foolish. Don't be put off by that either. Don't go back to it because now you think, well, it's too simple. It can't be true. No, it can be. So Norma says, if we totaled our worries, none of them, exactly, Norma. This is what used to fascinate me as a kid, right? When I was a teenager, right, about, let's see, 12, 13, 14, somewhere around there in that age, is to hear my mother on the phone. Now, I have to qualify this a little bit here, right? Norma, you probably know what I'm talking about here. Back in the day, people, the phone was not something that you pulled out of your pocket. The phone was something that was typically, like it was in your parents' bedroom or maybe in the hallway, but this was not something that you as a child had access to. You had to ask permission to phone. Phoning was a big deal. It was, you as a child may get to phone, I don't know, once a week, once a month, something like that. Very rare occasions, right? I mean, it's like if you needed something from your friend, well, you went over to the house and you asked them. That was it, He didn't phone people. So anyway, so when my mother was on the phone, right, you could hear her talking because, well, it's there and she's talking and so you could hear. So anyway, it's a rare event too. So once a week, she used to get on the phone with her friend, right? And every week it was the same thing. They would go through this catalog of things that they were worried about. Same conversation every week. Okay, this one is going to do this. And I mean, a lot of the worry is also gossip, which is one of the payoffs for worry. It's a way of gossiping, but making it sound like, well, I'm concerned for them. I'm just gossiping about them, but I'm trying to, convey that I'm actually worried about them. Nah, bullshit. You just like gossiping. But anyway, they would say the same worry stuff week in, week out. Not once did I ever hear them ask, well, did this stuff happen? And with your niece, the thing that you were worried about, did it actually transpire? What happened? They never followed up. They just repeated new worries week in, week out. I paid attention to what they were worried about. And I checked it just for my own interest sake, right? Just as I'm the kind of a scientific social studies side. I did lots of social studies when I was a teenager. I went and checked on the things that they were worried about to see if they actually worked out. As Norma said, they never did. Yeah, they never came to fruition. It was quite fascinating, but they never updated. They never ever came to this awareness that their worries were totally fruitless. They never bore fruit. Now it's a negative fruit, but they never did. So why were you doing this? Just fascinated me. They never even asked the question. They never even thought to check on their worries. Limited context perspective. They were completely and utterly and totally in that bubble, right? I mean, they got a lot of payoffs for the worries and the shoulds, right? I mean, it made them feel like they were caring people, and it made them sound like they intelligent because, well, you're paying attention and you seeing stuff that others aren't seeing and all of this. I mean, all sorts of nonsense reasons. In one of the next modules, maybe even the very next one, I've got a slide where it's full of, it's like a very packed, very dense slide. And it's about the payoffs for anxiety and worry. Well, let's go see. I think we're at the end of this year. So task and exercise. I'm just going to run through these. We haven't been doing these because we've been doing more of a casual, informal thing. But for those of you that really want to do this, and if you really want to do these and get into this, if you don't want to come on Zoom and discuss the stuff, you can email me your responses to the tasks and exercises. How do you justify your anxiety and worry? Do you get attention out of it? If you're honest, you're going to say, well, I can't. And yes, I have been. And yes, it's crappy. Right? But that's if you're honest. Is boredom a factor with your anxiety and worry? Lack of imagination. That was my mother's case and her friend. Lack of imagination. Pure and simple. Yes, I do think boredom was a very big factor in my mother's worry. But she didn't have the imagination to, she's not an unintelligent person, my mother, not at all, right? But doesn't mean that just because she was intelligent, that she didn't have, that she had imagination. She didn't, right? And she was very conventionality orientated, right? Status was super important to her. And anybody who's hung up on status, of course, they've got to do what everybody thinks they should do and all this. And they get locked into that bubble and they never develop. It's all about what society says you must do. So they never develop any imagination. So, of course, then without imagination, boredom is a big factor, right? So yeah, be careful of this. Be careful of this. What are the, she was worrying because she felt she should, right? And she got attention and all sorts of reasons. All the negative reasons here, pretty much. What are the motivations or reasons behind your worry and anxiety? Are they always valid? Well, again, like you said earlier, when we really think about it, no, there's no real valid reason for doing this. Pay attention to others who worry and are anxious and share what you notice about their motivations and justifications for what you do. This is very valuable. The first one is about you paying attention to yourself, right? But then the second one is when you start paying attention to others, you get to see things that you don't necessarily see about yourself. Now, doesn't mean that when you observe others, that's going to always apply to you. It might, and it might only apply in a very small measure. Doesn't matter. It's still awareness. It might not apply to you at all. Doesn't matter. It's still very valuable because it will be a massive, and very valuable lesson or understanding of what motivates people. If we understand motivations, we understand people. That's Jones. Jones is famous. Understand motivations, understand humans. That's it, right? So yes, imagination loves worry, but that's the wrong kind of imagination, Norma. Yes, exactly. I mean, I'm talking about imagination to get out of using your imagination for anxiety and worry. Use your imagination for exploring, for coming up with different resolutions, different solutions, or just for daydreaming. Just making up stories in your head. I don't know. Isn't that what daydreaming is? You're making up fun fantasy stories that give you joy and fun and pleasure, right? You can't be happy if you worry or think others are worried. Exactly. Worry is just a happiness drain. And I've seen this with people. They would get bothered by other people being happy. You say, huh? Does that make any sense? Have you seen this, Norma? To now? Have you experienced people like that? They didn't like others being happy. My mother was one such. Right? If I was happily doing whatever I want to, she would find something to do. I don't know. She couldn't stand to see me just happy on my own doing something. That's why I always avoided her. From the tiniest child that I was, my very first memory is be elsewhere to where my mother is. That's it. So I never spent any time with my mother. I have no memories of being hugged by my mother, thankfully. Anyway. So people, and don't say, oh, you poor thing. No, 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 no. This is a great positive, right? So all of it was massively positive. Yeah, exactly. So we've seen people who are just miserable that you happy, right? And those are the ones that are so caught up in anxiety and worry and they don't know what to do. So be aware of this, right? That there are people who just, they take it as a negative reflection on them because they miserable. They don't want you to be happy, right? And if they see you happy, it's very clear that they are miserable for no good reason. Because, well, if you can be happy, then so can they, because you're more or less the same circumstances. Right? So they can't stand this comparative mindset, hierarchy, all this. It's a terrible way of thinking, this continual competitiveness, continually comparing yourself to others, No, it's absolute crap and nonsense. If you're happy, great. It doesn't make me look bad because you're happy. That's just idiotic comparative nonsense, right? Rather say, instead of doing that, learn from somebody who's happy. Wow, this person's always happy. How can I also always be happy? I don't know, and wow, that person's always miserable. How can I avoid being miserable? Learn, 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 learn. Stop looking at this thing always as how it is making you look. This thing of how does it look, and this is we taught with our parents, how's this going to look? How many times did you hear this as a kid? How's this going to look? Who the hell cares how it's going to look? Only you, self-important mother that's concerned with status and self-importance and all this. Yeah. Yeah. Had to jump off the chair when dad knocked at the door. Wow, how do you mean, Norma? That's very interesting. Yeah, being busy does mean less time for worry, but it doesn't matter though. My mother, I don't know, she wasn't very good at being busy because she was very lazy in her own way, right? So, and she was lazy not because she couldn't make effort. She became lazy because she was too worried about failing. So it made her lazy. She didn't want to take that chance, that risk. Um, so you see people will make busy work for themselves to try and alleviate anxiety and worry. But of course, it doesn't work. It's a habit, and a habit is something that happens mindlessly, right? That's the nature of habits. They are little programs set about to have stuff happen without you being aware of it. That's a really, really terrible, terrible thing if you think about it. And when anxiety and worry becomes a habit, oh, now you really got problems, right? So another task and exercise we can do here is make a list of positive possibilities and alternatives to things you typically worry about. How probable are the positive options compared to the negative? I think I need to emphasize that probable, yeah. Put it in italics, right? So make a list. Okay, so you're worried about stuff. I'm worried about, all right. So I'm worried about my friend's health. Exactly. Bless my mom. Yes. Yes. She was a good example of what not to be. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So I learned lots of things from my mom in a way that she never intended. I mean, I learned all about anxiety and worry and the psychology, by observing her. Right? Well, at least when I was able to do so without her looking to try and find me some nonsense busy work. She was like, that same psychology is in the army. You can't be doing nothing in the army. This just no, never, never. Actually, there was one time though that did happen, but it was an exception. Yeah, 90% of what we worry about never. Exactly. It's just crazy. But now, if you actually take stuff and you are worried about stuff, or you find somebody that is right, and you do this, make a list of positive possibilities and alternatives to things you typically worry about. What could it be? What are alternatives to what you're worried about? You're going to be amazed. Wow, I never really thought about it. And of course, once you start writing positive things, this is the way the brain works. You might only, when you start the list, have one thing in mind. You write it down. Then your brain's, oh, but then you make a jump, right? The brain is very good at making jumps and connections. Okay, something else comes up. You write 2 and 3, and it starts to feed on itself. And now your brain rewires itself because of emphasis, and you're emphasizing on the positive. And suddenly your brain is making all sorts of connections that you never thought you could make. And bingo, there you go, right? So it's very helpful to understand how the brain works. Emphasis literally rewires the brain. It changes the brain wiring, emphasis, because you're telling the brain this is important, and the brain says, yes, okay, I'm going to rewire myself to give this more importance, and to be able to understand this, process it more, make more connections from this. The brain is very, very plastic and elastic and changes. It's an incredible mechanism, but we need to emphasize appropriately. You focus on anxiety and worry, all your brain is going to train your brain to see more stuff to be anxious and worried about. It's a loop. It's a spiral that feeds on itself. Be aware of this. So this exercise of making a positive list of possibilities and alternatives, this is really incredible. And then if you say, how probable are these options, right? So the thing you worried, you give it a probability. In other words, a percentage chance, right? Probable. 10% or anything that's less than 50%, well, there's a greater chance of it not happening than happening. If it's over 50% probability, then it's a greater chance of it happening than not happening. If it's 100%, it's definitely going to happen. If it's 0%, it's definitely not going to happen. Okay. So you're going to be astounded when you say, what are the probabilities of things happening? Well, take the probability of a meteor falling on your head. 0.000000000. I don't know how many zeros. 1, right? In other words, a very tiny, it's almost zero chance, almost zero chance. Yeah. So it doesn't mean that it's completely zero, no. But if you say, well, there's a zero chance that it's going to happen to everybody, absolutely. So it's me as opposed to somebody else. So the chances of it actually happening realistically are really zero, right? Because it can't happen to everybody. So the world is a big place, a lot of places for the meteors to fall. The chances of you being in exactly the right place is very small, very small. If you look up things that people worry about, and you actually look at the statistics of these things happening, it's like people are deadly afraid of sharks. You know what the chances of being bitten by a shark is? Well, it's less than being hit by lightning. Being actually bitten by a shark is a very low probability. I think the last time I looked, it was like 6 people a year worldwide die from sharks. Think about that. 6 people a year in the whole wide world die. Now, that doesn't mean that people aren't being bitten, but actually dying from sharks, right? So your fear of sharks is statistically, very, very ridiculous. That's like super ridiculous. Yes. I mean, very low chance of actually dying from a shark bite. And then you look at things that people do buy from, bee stings, allergies, well, of course, diseases, cancer. People are so scared of cancer. That's not the number one thing that kills people. Well, not in America anyway. Do you know what the number one killer in America is? Any of you know? From a medical point of view? Well, just I think statistically, actually. Even with COVID, it was still the number one, I think. I don't think COVID overtook it even. No guesses? Janelle? Norma? Nobody? I'll give it a couple more seconds here, maybe the lag. And if you're really quick, you can Google it. All right. Number one killer is heart attacks. Isn't that amazing? Think about it. Think about it. Think about it. Right? Anxiety. Yeah, exactly. Cardiovascular. Right. Exactly. Stuff related to your heart, right? Cardiovascular disease. Yeah, it's a better term than saying heart attacks, because they don't always die of heart attacks. Maybe not lack of dollar. Well, you would think so, Norma, but not really, right? But think about this. So heart-related issues. Let's take this into a little bit deeper. Yes, anxiety and worry. When people are anxious and worried, right? They're like put there as a physical thing. They're like put their their hand with like a clenched sort of a squeezing on top of their hearts to indicate, oh, I'm so worried about somebody, right? Or they put it up here, right? And they'll do this. Oh, I'm so worried. When you're anxious and worry, you're kind of squeezing your heart, or you're not. You kind of, wrenching your heart. You're putting a stress, kind of a squeeze, twist, squeeze, crunching squeeze, right, onto your heart. It can't be good for your heart, no? People who are happy and joyful, they have hearts that are open, that are abundant, that are mourners. People who love and see the positive and see the magic and see the mourners. They got big hearts. That's the whole, they don't literally have a big heart, but this is figuratively we say this because their hearts are working, they're pumping, they're expanding, they have healthy hearts, in other words. Anxiety and worry, unhealthy heart. Well, now when we start to put this together, yes, I know. We started to put it together, right? You say, whoa, maybe there is a psychological connection, a mood, an attitude, an emotional connection to why cardiovascular is the number one thing. Because why? Well, anxiety and worry, negativity. Think about that. Think about that. Yes? Isn't that something? Isn't that something? And the more and more disease is like this now. They're starting to see more and more that you cannot just look at this in a purely physical way. Take cancer. I knew this from a kid already. Sorry, they're starting to prove it now, but like this was a dirt to me as a kid. What is cancer but your body eating itself up, right? And if you say the percentage, oh, like he's really eaten up by this, whatever. Let's say somebody gets fired unfairly. And then you say, oh, it's like really eating him up. Yes? What does this mean? It doesn't mean literally, you don't see the person being munched by something. It means internally he's being eaten up. But this is exactly, and now they're starting to make the connection between when people have this unresolved issues, like with trauma, right? And trauma and cancer. Erica was just telling me about this, direct connection. So it's not the trauma necessarily that's directly connected to the cancer. It's the fact that somebody cannot resolve the reason for the trauma, the unfairness of it, the unjustness of it, the inequity of it. Why did it happen to me? There's no answer. It just happened, dude. It's just random. That's it. This is bad luck. Get over it. Move on. But if they can't, they get eaten up by the stuff, right? And it grinds at them. It bugs them. And of course, well, your body, it's an intent. You constantly pushing out a eating up vibe. Your body doesn't know what to do with this. And well, it translates it into whatever it can, which is cancer, right? Same thing with heart stuff, anxiety and worry. It's your heart being scrunched and crunched and squeezed and twisted and manipulated and abused, really. So not good for your heart, right? So there you go. So when you start to make these connections, we really see this. And if you really pay attention to idioms related to the body, like he's got his back up, right? When people have their back up, you can actually, there's a figurative meaning to it and a literal meaning. He's all wrapped up in himself. Same thing. There's a literal meaning to this. People discover, you work on the body, you all like they're wrapped up in themselves. Self-absorbed. It has a physical component. That's why we have all these expressions, because we understand that there's a direct relationship between physicality and our figurative stuff, right? Our emotions, our attitudes, our psychologies, our beliefs, our vibe, in other words, right? It directly translates. And again, connection is intent. If you're always anxious and worried, you're putting out in it. If you've eaten up something, you're putting out in it. Where does that intent manifest? There's nowhere else to but manifest in your body, materialize in your body, right? So when we understand this, it's a very big deal. Heart cardiovascular being the number one killer for a very good reason, right? Because anxiety and worry is so predominant, right? And not just anxiety and worry, but things that are related to anxiety and worry, like lack of self-trust, self-doubt. The self-doubt is basically worried that you can't do things. Yeah, well, it's the same thing. It's just a variation of anxiety and worry. So when we look at this, we say, wow, there's a lot more to this. It's not just a casual thing. It's a very, very big deal. Yes. So you want to be healthy, learn to be positive. Now, this is the key. Yes, the course that we're doing is freedom from anxiety and worry. The key is, you say, well, I've got to learn to stop being anxious and worrying. That's not enough. You say, well, what do you mean that's not enough? Isn't this what you're just telling me is the big problem? Yes, it's not enough. Why? Because we need to replace anxiety and worry with stuff that's healthy, right? So, okay, so you've been eating, give me an example of something that's an unhealthy thing to eat. Exactly. All worry is lack of trust, correct? And that's capital T trust, Norma, right? This is lack of trust in the universe, lack of trust in life. Yes. So give me an example of something that is unhealthy to eat. I mean, clearly and absolutely unhealthy to eat, but yet that people might eat anyway. I can't think of a good example offhand now. I mean, all right. Let's just say you eating, I don't know, some like, okay, well, drinking then. All right, you're drinking dishwashing liquid, or I don't know. You know, well, I know people do sometimes they drink like, like some kind of chemicals because they do it to get high. But I'm trying to think of something that's more directly, very obviously unhealthy. Anyway, the point is, if you're doing something that is directly unhealthy for you, like eating it, yes. So okay, so you stop drinking the I don't know, gas or petrol or I don't know, dishwashing, whatever you're doing that's really clearly, obviously unhealthy for you, right? Does that mean you're going to be healthy by stopping doing this? No. It just means that you've taken a negative out. It doesn't mean that you've added a positive. See what I mean? So sweets, no, sweets aren't necessarily unhealthy for you. But anyway, too much sweets, excess, yeah. It's very hard to find an example of something like this. But anyway, my point is, a better example is debt, right? Yeah. um, it's moderation with sweets, normal. Too much sweets, yeah, maybe. But anyway, I want to say, though, a better example that I'm talking about here is the absence of a negative doesn't necessarily lead to where you want to be. So you've got debt and you've got all this massive debt, and I come along or you win the lottery and you pay off your debt. Now what? Now where you at? Does it mean that you have a consistent income and your problems are solved? No, it just means you have no debt, which means you have no money. Right, at the same time, if you got zero, you've got no debt, which is the removal of the negative, but it doesn't mean you have money. In the same way of removing things that are unhealthy, like getting rid of anxiety and worry, it doesn't mean that you have what is healthy, what is positive, what is beneficial. So getting rid of the negative is not enough. We need to replace it with a positive. Getting rid of the debt is not enough. We need to replace it with having sustainable, reliable income, right? Or having an income that's, you're right, you're maybe winning the lottery, you put it in the bank and you live off it. Okay, you've got sustainable, reliable income after that, right? So getting rid of the debt is not alone, is not enough. Same thing with anxiety and worry. Getting rid of this doesn't mean that you're going to have positive habits. You need to replace it with positive habits, right? Healthy intent, right? So the opposite of getting rid of anxiety and worry is not to have no anxiety and worry. No, it's to learn to think positively, to think imaginatively, to think lovingly, to think in any things that are giving joy and wonder, sharing, for instance. This is a really great opportunity, sharing moreness. This is a massive, massive, wonderful alternative to anxiety and worry. And of course, when you do those things, if you're constantly being positive, how could you possibly worry? You can't. And there's another danger with simply taking care of the thing, right? It's the problem-solving mindset. Like when you get rid of your debts, you think your problems are solved. No, they're not. You need to have the positive. But here's the problem with a lot of things, like, for instance, anxiety and worry, or any problem that you get rid of, you solve the problem, and you end up in that space of zero. Now, especially with stuff that's habitual, like anxiety and worry, we cannot be a nothing. It doesn't work for us as human beings. We can't be a nothing. So now I'm so used to, I've gone all my life, and Anxiety and worry, this was part of my life. I'm used to it. I'm familiar with it. It's a thing that I do. Now, suddenly, let's say magically I come and say, well, boom, there your anxiety is, worry's gone. Now it's like, now what the hell do I do? Oh, I don't know. I don't know. And now you feel really lost and having nothing to do, not knowing what to do, in other words. This is worse than the negative thing that you were doing. So what do people do? They go back to their negative behavior if they don't have a replacement alternative. Happens all the time. They regress. They just go back. Like criminals, they go to jail. They learn, well, being bad and doing criminal stuff is not a good idea. But they don't taught. They're not taught how to be productive citizens. So what happens when they get out of jail? They don't know what to do. They go back to being a criminal because it's all they know what to do. They know it's bad. They know it's not a good idea. But well, what else am I going to do? Same thing. So it's not just about getting rid of it. That's why that making a list of positive possibilities and alternatives is so powerful. Developing this ability to do positively instead of negative. Right? The positive almost always gets rid of the negative. An example that I think you probably heard me use this before is another example beside the money one is, for instance, teaching your kids not to steal. Well, this is a good thing, right? Thou shalt not steal. It's all very negative, the Ten Commandments. I've got a whole perspective shifting workshop on the Ten Commandments, by the way, but I'll just focus on one here. If you teach your kids not to steal, they might learn this and find they don't steal. And say, wonderful, my kids don't steal. Does that automatically necessarily mean your kids are going to be kind and courteous and considerate and polite and caring and thoughtful and positive and loving? No, it doesn't. It just means that they don't steal. See the problem with negatives? However, teach your kid to be kind, your kids, plural, or anybody, teach yourself, right? If you're kind, considerate, courteous, caring, polite, loving, positive, etc., how can you possibly steal? It's not possible. You just can't do it. It's not polite, it's not courteous, it's not considerate, it's not helpful. It's not, you just can't do it, right? So you don't have to teach your kids not to steal. Teach them the positive, and they automatically won't do the negative. Never mind stealing, doing all sorts of other stuff. If you're kind and considerate and courteous and caring and loving, you're not going to torture anybody. You're not going to be a misogynist. You're not going to be a slave owner. You can't do any of those horrible negative things, right? You can't do it. You can't do it. So the absence of a negative is not necessarily a positive. Yeah. Very, very, very important point. So getting rid of your anxiety and worry is not the objective. It is replacing your anxiety and worry. That is the objective. Focus on the positive and the negative will get taken care of automatically. Yes? You can steal time too. Yes. Now, that's a magical way that you've written that. Right? Because to steal a knife, right, that is to sharpen it, right? That's what the things were called, so that big rod, right? And you'll see the chefs and they go like that. That's calling to steal your knife. So to steal time would be to sharpen time. You can sharpen time, yes, Norma. You absolutely can. And by shifting to, instead of just saying, oh, I want to get rid of my anxiety and worry, that's not your goal. By shifting it to, I want to replace it with something that's valuable, that's useful. This is sharpening your time because you're going to be doing two things at once. One, you're going to gain the positive qualities, and two, you're going to get rid of the negative automatically. Magical, marvelous, excellent usage of your time. Right? So yeah, so I like that. To steal time. Yes, sharpen your time. Use your time efficiently and effectively. Yes. Steal is worry of poverty, not able to feed your children. Yes, yes, exactly, exactly. Yeah, very cool. All right, so let's go on a little bit more here and see. I think this is now we're coming to the end of module 2. Worry is something to actually worry about. If you want to worry about something, worry about worrying and see how far that gets you. Right? I mean, that's something legitimate to be worried about, is worrying itself and anxiety. Yeah, but now you go around in a circle and you see the foolishness of it. That's the point. A square circle, that's what worry and anxiety is. It's a square circle, something that you think is real, but it's only real in your head. It can't actually exist. Worry is a self-fulfilling worry. Yeah. So this is like the smack after that previous one. Right? No. Pow. There you go. Worry is a self-fulfilling worry. Foolishness. 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 Right? There's no need to do it. No need to do it. And don't do it because it thinks it makes you a good person. No. You want to really be a good person? Push out the opposite of loving. Right? Push out positivity, solutions, imaginations, alternative perspectives. I don't have a solution for you, but well, maybe this, maybe that, maybe that. Who knows? One of them might work. It's better than saying it won't work, it won't work, it won't work. It's gonna fail, it's gonna fail, it's gonna fail. What the hell, man? This doesn't really help anything. Yeah. Or you could do what ifs, for instance. Well, what if this, what if that? I don't know. I mean, you can maybe look and be concerned about, look and be discerning. And well, your square wheeled bicycle. I'm not so sure this is going to work, right? It doesn't mean you're being negative. You're just being realistic, right? All right. So I just want to go to module 3 and see. Otherwise, I'm going to end it here to see if this is the one that has that. Yeah. It does. It does. Seriously, who do we think we're fooling? Right? Who do you think you're fooling with all that anxiety and worry? Anybody with half a brain sees it for what it is. Yeah, square circle stuff. All right. so, so I'm not going to go through this now. I'm going to do this next week because this is a big issue here. Right? A very, very big slide. Very big slide. So maybe take a screenshot of this. There's a lot in here. It's a very big deal. Anybody, but we'll come back to it next week, right? So this is what are the payoffs and motivations, and we'll go through this next week. This is a massive big deal. There's a lot in this slide here, as you can see. It's a very profound slide, and it's not one that most people really, when you hear the things, it's like, oh yeah. But ask yourself the question: what is the payoff or the motivation for your anxiety and worry? That question, what's the payoff? Man, this is huge. People do all sorts of weird stuff because there is a payoff. Sometimes the payoff is just totally bogus, and other times the payoffs are legitimate. But they're always limited context payoffs. Just because you're getting a little bit, it doesn't mean that there's not more to be had elsewhere. But don't be satisfied with a little bit that you can get. And don't be satisfied because you're getting a payoff, but you're paying this massive price. So you get, you get your reward, whatever it is. All right. Let's say you it's like gambling, right? You're playing your slot machine. Oh, I won $10. But how much have you put into the slot machine? $100. People keep playing because every now and then they get those payoffs, right? And they play. I mean, people who are addicted to playing the slot machines. Literally, they go every day. They play, because they just focused on the payoff. They're not looking at the bigger picture, right? They spend more than they get. This is the same thing with anxiety and worry, or lots of other behaviors. Self-pity is a classic one, where you're getting a little bitty payoff, but you pay a massive price for it. Incredible, really incredible stuff. Really incredible stuff. So this is very potent to look at. Really useful and potent to look at. So we'll start on this next week. What's the payoff and the motivation? Any questions before we go? Any comments? I love that you guys are here, by the way. Norma, love that you're here. So now, love that you're here. It's a big deal to me. It means a lot to me. I mean, I'm talking to you guys, I mean, I'd love it if you came on Zoom. But I realize it's not always viable or possible. So, but anything before we go? Just say. Give it a little time. I really do enjoy it when you're here. I like talking with you guys. Oh, absolutely a pleasure, Janelle. Always. So you do know you can come on Zoom anytime, right? I mean, any other when like, just say if you want to come, no problem. This is for anybody. You want to come on Zoom during this in the live? You're more than welcome to come. I like having people to discuss and interact with. It's fun, I mean, otherwise I'm just kind of giving a lecture. I don't care for lectures. Right? Not really any comments right now. Very good, Norma. That means I've done my job. There's nothing more to say. Wonderful. Thank you. That's a great compliment. I'll take it very egotistically. Right. I've said all there is to say. No more to comment on. That's it. Problem solved. Everything is resolved. The world is fine and wonderful as it is. I really do feel the world is fine and wonderful as it is. That's very important. But I'll take your comment in the most positive way I possibly can. Thank you, Norma. Thank you for being here, Norma, and you too, Janelle. Thank you very much. It's much, much, much appreciated. All right. On that note, I'll end things. So bye-bye. 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 See you again next week. Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. Oh, I can't reply to you.